ask her if she's crazy.
You ready, Timmy? We are going to call to order this regular meeting of the Miami Special Utility Authority for Tuesday, November 18th. Item number 2 is invocation by the pastor of Bethany Christian Church, Mr. Ron Eden. Ron?
Father God, I thank you for the opportunity to live in this country, to live in the state of Oklahoma, and to live in Miami. Thank you for the leaders that we have. Pray that you would bless them and their families. Pray that you would guide them today, that you would give them your wisdom. Pray that they would keep in mind the things that you would have done, not just their own agendas tonight. Father, we lean on you and we thank you for all that you do for us. All these things we bring to you in Christ's precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ron. Please join in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4 is public input, unscheduled personal appearances. Anyone in the audience that wants to address the authority on any of the agenda items? There being none, item 5 is a consent agenda. Staff is recommending items 6 through 9 for the consent agenda. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, did you want to leave them as they were, 9 and 10, or?
Yeah, why don't we pull 9 out and we'll do the update first and then we'll address item number 9. So, items 6 through 8.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve items 6 through 8 on the consent agenda.
And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Johnson?
Aye.
Forrester?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Sharpen?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye. Thank you. We're gonna take item 10 next and then come back to item 9. Item 10 is update on Rockdale Bridge and Street Program. Joe and Tyler, or Tyler?
So we were asked tonight to do an update on the street program and also on the Rockdale Bridge. So we'll start with the street program first. Currently, if you've been watching the news or the paper, Twitter, and Facebook, which if you would like, we ask everyone to follow us on those, on Facebook and Twitter, because we keep them pretty up to date every week. But the contractor is about ready to finish up I-Northwest. With the weather that we've had this week, it's been kind of slow as far as finishing up the curb, but he's planning on pouring the remaining curb of I Street on Thursday to finish that up. And then he also has his second lift of rock in. So, and that's
Has
all
what?
passed. His second lift of rock.
Okay.
So now he's just getting ready to set his dowel baskets in and pour the concrete. So he's hoping, with the nicer weather, that he can get on that pretty soon. On in Northwest, which is another street he's working on, he is currently putting in a second lift. So when the weather gets a little bit better, Wednesday, Thursday, he's going to start adding rock to that to bring it up to the correct grade so he can
And
start
when
doing
you say
curb.
the second lift, Tyler, what does that mean?
We put 2 lifts on our road, so we do 16 inches of aggregate base or rock.
Okay.
So we say the first lift is the first 8 inches. So he'll put 8 inches down, he'll roll it, then we'll have it tested for density, make sure that it meets specifications. Then we'll put the second lift on, test it, make sure it meets specifications. Then he'll go in and he'll place the curb, and then he'll come in and do the streets, because he can grade off of the curb, grade the street, so that whenever he comes back in and pours the concrete, we'll have 6 inches of concrete to make sure the crown is correct in the road and everything.
And both of those streets are concrete that we're
Yes,
talking
sir.
about,
Yes,
no
sir.
asphalt, right?
They're all concrete. And then after that, he is planning on going over to 13th, and start excavating that street. And then the
is
final
13th
one.
Is that gonna be the last one for the winter
No,
season?
sir. We'll have one more, East BJ Tunnel Boulevard, from the railroad tracks to the truck route.
Okay.
So
And what's happening with that crossing there? Was there gonna be some work done on the crossing?
Chuck would have to address that. I know that there has been some talk, but
Yeah, it seems like a few meetings back, Chuck, there was some talk about that crossing there on BJ Tunnel. Can you just refresh our memory on that?
Yes, the council approved, we haven't got an agreement yet with the railroad, but the opportunity to participate in that program. So they'll be sending us a contract for that, for the sharing of the 10% cost in those improvements. We haven't received that yet from ODOT, who's going to be administrating that program.
So we're gonna go ahead and do the street part of it and then follow up with the crossing part when
Yes,
that gets done. Okay.
Chuck, correct me though, the last we spoke, we also talked about agreeing to possibly, is there any other type of update on the?
On the railroad, another possibility is, well, the railroad also has a program, or the state has a program with some safety funds. If a crossing is closed, they will pay for 100% of the cost for the improvements at 3 crossings.
3 crossings.
So staff has been looking at that and may come before the planning commission with a recommendation, and then we'll come to the city council based on their recommendation whether or not to close a crossing or not. That
Right.
hasn't been identified specifically at this point in time yet.
Travis suggested to me earlier that staff may recommend a staff level public meeting for informational purposes in case members of the public want to come forward and discuss it before it goes to the planning commission and obviously before it comes to the council for a vote on an ordinance.
As far as the closing of a crossing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on streets, Tyler, before we talk about the bridge?
No, sir, that's all on the streets.
Okay.
Then on Rockdale Bridge, which we like to put out there, we also Facebook and Twitter. We are working with Ottawa County District 3 on this, so we've been very, very pleased to be able to work with them on this. We have the other old bridge removed. It's all removed. We had to actually rent a bigger traco with a 10,000-pound jackhammer on the front to tear out some of the bridge because there were sections that were 3 foot thick in concrete that we had a hard time breaking up. So we had to actually rent a larger traco than we have. To do it. That's actually it right there, the closest one in the
I will
picture.
state that there is a few people glad that you rented the bigger one to speed up the process.
Yes, I can imagine because you could hear the hammering of the
you
little
can hear
one.
the hammer for quite some time.
And so, especially when we had 2 going, it was kind of harmony back and forth. So,
Harmony, so.
so we have all the old one hammered out. We actually have so after we got it hammered out, then we started hammering out the footings into the rock. So we have the middle. We hammered out the middle, the center footing. We have it poured. We poured it a couple weeks ago, and we have the other two ends hammered out, which you can see I'm working on one of the ends right now. And we're going to pour those Thursday. The weather's supposed to be really nice. We're going to pour it. We plan on pouring both of those Thursday, and then we're going to put blankets on it because it is going to get close to freezing. So we're going to have blankets over that just to keep them warm. So once we have that, then which we had on the agenda tonight, we'll have the notice to proceed for the actual precast pieces, so that contractor can finish those up and deliver those to on site, so we can start setting those in place. So there's us and the county guys. There's pouring the center footing, and we're having all of our concrete tested as far as following all the specifications and everything. We have our engineer that comes down pretty much weekly to make sure progress is going as anticipated. If there's any questions, we can have them answered. So it's going very well. Once we get the precast set in place, we're planning on setting the first precast sometime in December, probably first to mid December. Then we'll set the second section probably towards the end of December or the middle of January. And then after we do that, then it'll be a matter of putting the guardrail, putting the concrete guardrail on it, then putting the metal guardrail like as the Central Avenue Bridge has, and then we'll have the pedestrian fencing because we're going to have a walkway on it, so they'll be doing that. And then we're going to have sidewalks that go from each road onto the bridge. So someday maybe we could have a walking trail to go all the way around that section.
And then you say it's going to be asphalted, so the top
Yes, sir.
driving surface will be asphalt,
Yes, sir.
not concrete. Why is that?
Just that's just easier for us to do as far as getting because it's going to have somewhat of an arch in it. Mm-hmm. So just getting that arch and everything, it's hard for us to get the arch of the concrete.
Okay. And so item number 9 that we deferred off the consent agenda is just the notice to proceed for Apex.
Yes, sir.
On the
They're making the precast bridge pieces. So I talked to him today, and he was looking forward to getting the notice to proceed. And he said once we get this, then we'll schedule on with the crane because we don't have a large crane come in to set these in place. And we have a power line on one side, a bunch of trees on the other, so making sure that they can swing and. So
And do we have an approximate completion date?
we're shooting for April because there's a lot of even though we get them set in place, there's still a lot of fine details that have to go into it and the sidewalk and different things. So
Do they already know the measurements and what they need for the precast?
yes, sir. That's how we bid it out with the measurements and everything and the drawings and the engineered drawings. And what they do is, so we had our engineer draw it up, and then everybody bid on it, and then everybody, the precast companies, they all have their own little twist that they do. As far as their 2 foot 8 inch sections, well, this person maybe their forms may be set up to be 2 foot 8 inches and a quarter wide or something. Just so everybody's a slight bit different, and so their engineer submits to us exactly what it is as far as it's 2 foot 8 inches wide, whatever, and then we approve that, and so yeah, it looks good. So
The overall width, is this going to stay pretty similar to what was currently there?
yes, but the walking trail will be on the south side instead of on the north side of this one.
Lighting,
Yes, sir. We're gonna have 2 lights,
both sides?
both sides. We'll have 1 light on each side, so it'll be lit up nicely. It'll be we're hoping it should be very similar to the Central Avenue Bridge, because we liked how that came out real well. So, and we would like to thank again District 3 for helping us out. Russell Earls and his crew. I mean, they've been awesome. Scott and all the guys.
Do you have just a ballpark estimate of what we're saving by working with the county on that?
No, we kind of talked to Russell about putting something together at the very end of the project as far as what we saved, just to show everybody working together.
Yeah, I think it's important for the taxpayers to know, to see what that value is. And we know there's a lot of value there, but if we can quantify it, I think that would be nice.
Yes, sir. It's kind of interesting putting the county and the city guys together, because when we have 2 jackhammers, they want to see who can jackhammer the most. Or, I mean, we had probably 20 trucks hauling out one day. I mean, so you can imagine all the people, 10-wheelers going by their house. They were excited.
A lot of jokes that could have been made out of it.
Yes, sir.
We won't. Anything else on that, Tyler?
No, sir.
Okay, so then we are back to item number 9, approved notice to proceed for Apex Precast. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Sherbert?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Forrester?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Tyler. Other new business, any new business? Item 12, staff reports. Written reports are in your packet if available, and staff is present for questions if there are any questions.
Nope.
Item 13, trustee and community announcements. Any announcements? Do you want to talk about the street crews?
I can, or I can wait. Which one you want me to wait? I'll do it now.
Let's do it now.
I know everybody up here on the council, and Dean, we're very appreciative of the city crews during our snow event. As always, they do a great job, and Tyler, I hope you pass that along to your men. Thank you.
Okay, item 14, future agenda planning, and item 15 is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
And a third?
Second.
Forrester?
Sure.
Okay, Weston?
Aye.
Weston? Sherbert?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
We
Schultz.
are adjourned. Aye, thank you. We are adjourned. We are going to go right into the regular meeting of the Miami City Council for today. And item 2 is public input and unscheduled personal appearances. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address the council on any of the agenda items? There being none, item 3 is the consent agenda. Staff is recommending items 4 through 9 for the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve items 4 through 9 on the consent agenda, Mayor.
Second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Johnson?
Aye.
Forrester?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Sherbert?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye. Item 10, approve 2 of 2014 representative appointments to Grand Gateway Board of Directors for 1-year term. It has Mayor Schultz next to that. And Neil, I know that you and Jill have served on that in the past. Are you guys wanting to continue in that role?
I am, if she is.
Yes, but I have a correction, it's 2015.
2015, okay.
Oh.
That's what I thought, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so I am recommending Councilman Johnson and our Deputy City Manager, Jill Fitzgibbon, to fill those 2 positions to the Grand Gateway Board of Directors for the 2015 year.
Need a motion, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Motion to.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Weston?
Aye.
Sherbert?
Aye.
Forrester?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Item number 11, ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to rezone the property at street address 36 East BJ Tunnel from M2 zoning to C5 zoning. And we have Chuck Childs and Chuck Chestnut. Chuck, good evening.
Thank you very much, Councilman. I represent Brad Anderson. Brad owns the what used to be the Eagle Picture Building, not the research lab per se that runs east-west, but the building that runs north-south that's adjacent to Montana Mike's. It's actually on BJ Tunnel Boulevard. It is currently zoned M2, which is essentially a manufacturing industrial zoning type classification. And we have requested that the zoning classification be amended to C5, which is a commercial classification. That really is the highest and best use of the property and really is in conformance with the zoning classifications for the other businesses that surround that. Brad purchased that building. He plans to rent the space out to Travis Jones and his wife, or actually Travis's wife, for a tanning salon, and also to Randy Billings of Miami Glass, so that Randy can operate Miami Glass out of there. In order to do that, we need to change the zoning classification, and we have published as required by the ordinances. We've mailed to everybody within 300 feet. The Planning Commission has approved that application. We're asking the council tonight to join in that and to approve the zoning change at this time.
Chuck, do you have any, can you come up, please? And do we have any diagrams at all? I mean, I don't know that, I mean, I didn't ask for anything to be prepared. I just didn't know if staff had anything. I just want to be sure which buildings we're talking about.
No, I'm sorry, don't have any diagrams in the presentation. There wasn't any, but basically the building immediately to the east of Montana Mike's, that office building there, is the facility that we're talking about.
Okay.
520. Which it runs north.
It runs north
and south.
It's directly adjacent to Montana Mike's.
We're not talking about the metal building behind that, just the old laboratory, Eagle Picture Lab.
I don't think we're talking about the metal building necessarily.
There is a metal building behind
Yes.
it.
Yes.
The answer is yes.
That's attached to the building, and that is part of the overall parcel that's been rezoned.
So they will both be
Well, it's just the whole classification needs to be changed to conform with the classifications with the other properties around it.
It's the real, Councilman, it's the real estate land description that would be redesignated to C5, which would mean anything on the premises would be available for lawful use for C5 zoning purposes.
And C5 is
Commercial.
commercial.
It's one of the commercial designations.
And were you at the Planning Commission meeting, Chuck?
Yes,
Childs?
yes.
And David, were you there also?
Yes, sir.
What issues, if any, were raised or considered by the Planning Commission?
There was, Dave presented information on the rezoning of the property. There was questions about the parking, which was addressed at different commercial purposes, depending on those purposes, require different parking amounts. That was brought up, that even though the site is rezoned, it still has to meet those parking requirements for uses, and depending on how that site is used, the amount of space, or specifically what type of spaces, affects what type of parking they need.
So even within C5, there's different uses that have different parking requirements. Is that what you're saying,
Yes,
Chuck?
sir.
Correct.
Okay. And so, Chuck Chestnut, other than the tanning and the window business, is there anything else that Brad is contemplating that you know of?
Not contemplated at this time.
Okay. And is there adequate parking there now for those two purposes?
There are 47 parking spaces there currently, which would meet the code requirements for that space.
How many spaces are available, is my question. I mean, you got two, right? Is that gonna be the only two?
You don't mean parking spaces, you
No, I mean people that are
business
leasing.
spaces.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, there are only two at the current time.
Is there any future planning?
Don't know about that, but if there were any future planning and if the parking requirements were to change, then we would ask for a variance from the Planning Commission or for the Board of Adjustment to address that need.
But the parking that's there now is sufficient for the two businesses that are contemplated according to code.
I would think so.
as far as the office space was proposed was 2,000 square feet of commercial office space retail. That requires one space for every 100 square feet of office space, so that's 20 spaces. As far as the other proposed, I'm not sure what the other proposed spacing was or what those requirements are for the glass business.
I think that the spaces available will meet the requirement for the space that's going to be used currently.
David, did you have any concerns?
Mayor, first of all, I was grateful that the parties came forward and addressed the parking issue, and I, extended them not only my hopes for their commercial success, but I was grateful that they brought forward the parking issue. And so I did point out to the Planning Commission that as presently zoned, the structure had plenty of parking spaces to meet its industrial classification. It would also meet the zoning classification for professional services offices. And we discussed the fact that there's, I think, about 12,000 square feet in the main building, about 4,000 square feet in the metal building, and really just to make sure that everyone was on the same sheet of music. I pointed out that if the entire main building was open to retail space, about 126 parking spaces would be indicated by the zoning code requirement. And if the metal building were open to the public for retail use, that would require an additional 40 spaces, because again, it's 1 per 100 square feet. And I just thought it was best to have that conversation going in so that the Planning Commission would have a chance to ask questions, and Mr. Anderson could ask questions if he had any. Mayor, I left the meeting with the clear understanding that those issues had been discussed, that I drafted a resolution which was signed by the chairman of the Planning Commission in response to the petition. Hopefully it's in your packet. And pointed out that while the Planning Commission approved the request for a recommendation for change in the zoning classification, they weren't recommending a departure from the law, which of course made sure that everyone would understand, as Mr. Chestnut pointed out, that should Mr. Anderson believe his parking was sufficient to meet its commercial purpose, even if it didn't meet the zoning ordinance, he could come to the Board of Adjustments and request a variance. But I believe there was a clear understanding that that would not be, that had not been somehow automatically pre-approved, that it would have to be taken one step at a time. On that basis, Mayor, I have no concerns, legally speaking.
And is there, because I'm not familiar with the plot
Yes,
of land, is there additional land available that could be converted to parking if there was additional retail use?
I'm not sure. Mr. Chestnut may know. I wasn't sure of the location of the rear property line. If you look at an aerial map from Google Earth, it can give the impression that there's a large grassed-in area behind the building. Harold Post pointed out to me, or suggested to me at the Planning Commission meeting, that most of that grassy area had not been purchased by Mr. Anderson, so I think it's questionable whether there's a whole lot of land available for additional parking.
Chuck, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Chuck, was there any objections at the planning? As far as
there was no people from the public that spoke against it or for it.
Okay.
There was a healthy discussion, Neil, about the fact that it may be appropriate going forward in the comprehensive plan process, which is currently in process, to reevaluate parking requirements in the city and to try to come up with a more suitable approach, which may or may not be uniform. It may be based on the location in our business districts and so forth.
Current best practices usually suggest that current codes require too much parking. If you look at some of our larger big box stores and all that, you'll see acres of parking that's really never used, and the attitude is that if you had parking for what the business would really need, you could save a lot of cost in development and still serve the public very well and actually increase green space in the community. So that's something that I think the comp plan will be working with, but as David indicated, we've got to deal right now with what our current code says.
You know, there are a number of states and a number of locations where the law changes on some pretty big issues. Until the law changes, staff are charged with the duty to administer the law as it exists.
Correct.
But I did want you to know that at the highest level, staff are considering bringing forward recommendations that could bring a different view to parking requirements.
Correct.
Dean, you have any thoughts or concerns?
I think David has plotted out a pretty middle ground based on what our code is and what we might change our code to. I do know that there is a concern about, you know, if you could have too much parking or parking on grass or, you know, having those issues, but to a great degree what's being proposed right now in those buildings, the two businesses, 47 parking spaces would probably be enough right now, probably more than enough.
Yeah, I don't think the glass business would probably use
No.
very many spots.
And it depends on how many tanning beds we have in there, but I don't know if we'd have that many people working on their tents.
Well, and in the interest of full disclosure, I'm a partner in a building where Mr. Billings is a former tenant. That's his name, Myron Glass. Yes, and I can tell you that it didn't call for a great deal of parking.
Right.
We did lose him as a tenant, but it doesn't call for a great deal of parking.
When was the last time this was even used as an industrial building? When does anybody remember?
Well, essentially, I think what was going on is that really constituted Eagle Pictures' office space.
Right.
But because the research lab was on the east side of that, and because it was zoned that way, they extended that zoning classification to the office space as well.
And
And
it's
I don't think it was ever really used as an industrial manufacturing.
and I agree to that. I don't believe I've ever seen anything of it. But it's been empty since they've left until recently.
10 years
Thermal Fisher consolidated all the buildings. We did the upgrade on Main Street, and we consolidated all 5 of our buildings into one. And that was the last time that building was used.
So in my opinion, I think it's a great opportunity to get some form of commercial business in there. As always, anytime there's a commercial business in town, you always want it to, to look nice and represent your town well. And I have a feeling that won't be a problem with the people that's
Successful.
possibly going to be going in there. So.
What was the planning commission approved unanimous on this?
Yes.
Any more questions? We have a motion
Most approved.
and a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Forster,
Aye.
Johnson, Schultz.
Aye.
Aye. And item 12 is emergency clause for the same ordinance.
Make a motion to approve the emergency clause, Mayor.
And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Johnson,
Aye.
Forster,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you very much.
Item 13, other new business, if any. Any new business? There being none. Item 14, staff reports. Any staff reports? There being none. Item 15 is mayor council announcements. Any announcements?
I'd like to say for anybody that's at home and that doesn't want to watch this council meeting that NEO is hosting their rival tonight, playing, Coffeeville. So feel free to head out or stay home and watch this council meeting.
Can we still say go NEO around here?
You're more
Does
than
that really
welcome
date
to.
me?
So as soon as the meeting's over, or sooner,
Or you can get up late.
since we're about to go into executive session, I would say you can go now if you want. Item 16 is executive session pursuant to 25 OS 307B2, B4, 307E, and I think that's
305. No.
I think that
Covers it.
covers it.
Yeah.
And 305, which requires that any vote be cast in public. Do we have a motion to go into executive session for the reasons articulated in the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve, Mayor.
And a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Johnson,
Aye.
Forster,
Aye.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Thank you. We are now in executive session. We are out of executive session at 8:01. Item 17 is directions of city attorney regarding claims and Napoli's. And Mr. Anderson, if you would just proceed with that.
Yes, sir.
Item 18, future agenda planning. We currently have a regular council planning meeting scheduled for next Tuesday. We may move that up just so that, because there's a Rotary auction later that evening that several members are supposed to be at. And we'll make that decision in a couple of days. And item 19 is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, man.
And a second. Roll call.
Johnson.
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
Forrester.
Aye.
Sharbit.
Aye.
Schultz.